Welcome, 2021, a new year. Welcome to Best Health Radio and our surfing of this new year. We are living in unprecedented times. It's even been called an epidemic of emotional inflammation. And you can feel so many things just kind of fraying at the edges. My best friend sent me a birthday package, and I have tried 5 times to go to my beloved post office and pick it up. And each time there are lines all the way winding through the office and out into the parking lot. One time I tried waiting, and after 45 minutes, I just gave up. And some of the tellers are sitting there with nothing to do, but they're not allowed to go into the picking up package line. Why? Because the post office seems to be fraying at the edges. I need to get a new computer. I have to even make an appointment at Apple to get the computer, and they're only making the appointments a week ahead of time. And if you call, they're already booked. I've tried getting up at 4:30 in the morning to try and make that appointment, and they're booked. 359,000 Americans, almost that point, at this point, have died from COVID, and some people are even accusing medical doctors of falsely saying that they have died of COVID. This has been quite the time. I am reminded of John Kabat-Zinn's book. It was one of the first most well-respected, influential books on mindfulness, and it was called Wherever You Go, There You Are. And the concept was, when you walk into a room, you bring your whole life with you. As that line in Mad Men said, you are always becoming who you are. In the pandemic, wherever you don't go, there you are. And that has brought up a lot for a lot of people. Some people are handling this time really well. I just had a coffee clutch with a neighbor that is kind of part of my bubble. And she said it's brought their family together. It's brought her and her husband together. It's brought family dinner together. They don't allow phones at the table, and they now eat all their meals together. And so the pandemic for them has created more of a familial glue. Yet there is this incredible discourse. Who do we believe anymore? Conflicting misinformation. What's very exasperating to me is we hear of all this strife on every level: health, political, community, but there isn't a lot of conversation about how to really make ourselves more congruent and healthy, because the best way to battle all of this is to have in place a healthier body, mind, spirit center where you experience your world from. Wherever you go, wherever you don't go, there you are. So I started pondering this. One of the things I bumped into in pondering this is one of the leaders that we have always looked up to. There's almost nobody that doesn't look up to Abraham Lincoln. And in his first inaugural address, which was delivered long, long ago, Monday, March 4th, 1861, it was part of his taking oath of office for his first term as the 16th president of the United States. And we're about ready to have another president do that. He wanted to heal national discord. So one of the words that ended his speech was the mystic chords of memory stretching from every battlefield and patriot grave to every living heart and hearthstone all over this broad land will yet swell the chorus of the Union, when again touched, as surely they will be, by the better angels of our nation. So he didn't want us to be divided. He wanted all that had come, all that who had died, all that had strife to come together to unite us by the better angels of our nature. Boy, the pandemic has brought out Karens. It's brought out racism, people that deny it, people that are still experiencing it. It's brought out so much struggle. And then this brings up the concept of how do you best cope with this struggle to bring yourself in 2021 into a space of hope. I love that line in Shawshank Redemption where Red says, if a man doesn't have hope, he just can't live. And that's one of the reasons that more people as they age move toward depression, because they see the end of their life and less options available to them. So the font size of their hope gets smaller. So how do you, in strife-filled times, nurture hope for yourself, hope for tomorrow, hope for our nation, hope to believe authority figures? I won't talk about the drug that shouldn't be named, but there is a meta-analysis of 28 studies. A meta-analysis is taking a look based on a set of factors of studies that have enough similar set of factors, looking at an outcome to see the trend of that outcome. So there were 28 peer-reviewed studies that showed a drug that should not be named was powerful to prevent COVID if you were exposed to it and to treat it if you got it. And the CDC has banned it. I just presented that meta-analysis in a Facebook post, and I got a note from Facebook that I was a bad girl. And if I published anything like this again, I would be banned from Facebook. So here we have times of strife, and yet we have some little answers, like little lilacs early in the spring or little blades of grass peeking their heads, of some positivity, of some hope, and they're being squelched. So that makes it even harder to find calm and hope inside of ourselves, because where is the truth? Is it all based on money? How many people in Washington are making money off the vaccines, but are you going to be in line for the vaccines? And is the new variant that has more infectivity, although apparently not worse outcome of COVID, is that going to be affected by the vaccine? There's so many unknowns. But life is always like this. Life is always like this. It's always filled with the unknown. And we here in America are always striving to have all of our ducks in a row. And in these unprecedented, struggling times, we less and less see that we can have all our ducks in a row. And we see that the people that we look up to, usually leaders, authority figures, experts, they also don't have all their ducks in a row. So we, within our own lives, here we are, whether we're going somewhere or not going somewhere, wherever you go, wherever you don't go, there you are. So how do we not become overwhelmed and Velcroed to that struggle, but find some peace and hope? The second spike that was predicted for winter has just begun. We have no idea if and when this is going to end. Of course it's going to end, but we have no idea how. We're in the same somewhat alarming situation that we were when COVID first really blew everybody out of the water in March of 2019. Even over the last 8 months, our vocabulary has evolved to include new words to describe what we have been going through. So obsessively searching your phone or iPad for information, whether it's COVID or political, it's called the doom scrolling. Married couples who break up during quarantine are called COVID divorce. People who say, there is no COVID, this isn't worse than the flu, are COVID deniers or COVIDiots. There's a PhD I admire, Tom Stedding, and he declares that we're in a psychodemic. One of the people I really look up to is a forensic psychiatrist out of DC, and she's from France. She got her medical degree in Paris, and she published a book in April. just really, she was writing this prior to the pandemic, and it came out right in the early rumblings of the pandemic. She said, we, as a human race, not just in the United States, are suffering from emotional inflammation. And the name of her book is called Emotional Inflammation. And what I really love is that she's also an environmentalist, because that which is around you is always interacting with that which is inside of you. And that's why none of us can say same old, or if they do, run for the hills. They're out of touch with reality and probably not somebody you want to have a socially distanced lunch with on their patio, as I'm going to do this afternoon with Neil and his wife. We normally get together once a year to make kimchi, and he has a garden in his backyard, and we are going to socially distance in his patio after we pull all these vegetables out of the garden, and his wife, Jennifer, is just going to go cook them in the kitchen, and I'm going to bring along some of my goodies too. But many of us are emotionally inflamed, and who wouldn't be? Who couldn't be? Because here we are in a planet that is emotionally inflamed. So the idea is how to cope with the challenges of a turbulent world. But gosh, when is life never really not turbulent? You know, Ozzie and Harriet in the 50s looked like everything was peaceful and calm, but nothing is ever as it seems. So we're going to talk a little bit about calming your body, calming your mind, reclaiming a sense of peace and purpose and connection to others. But really, you got to understand, nothing is ever really totally as it seems, and you have the ability to co-create your experience of how you are living within the epicenter of what is unfolding. A lot of us have been Netflix binging, and I got into the Outlanders and really got into the male hero. Thought, oh my God, this guy has got it all. He's got a great voice. He's got a great career. He's got a great physique. He's one of the lucky people. And then you dive deep into his life and you discover that after the Outlanders came out, he has been relentlessly stalked by people who were mesmerized by who he was, and his life was threatened. The people in his world's life were threatened, and it ended up being a nightmare, not just a gift of success. Nothing is totally as it seems. Nothing is as totally as it seems. So if that's the truth, even though we are in turbulence, you can also have turbulence throughout all of yourselves. We're made up of multiple selves. We often call it body, mind, and spirit. Some people say we have fear bodies, pain bodies, love bodies. We are a tapestry. But that means that we have such a co-creative force to make much of our bodies, much of how we inhabit ourselves, stronger and more hopeful. So how the heck do we do this? You know, I was just in Florida, because I go there now once a week, because I've been given the honor to develop a functional medicine renal program. And I was hanging out with a lot of retirees in Florida, where I normally live in Austin, where the median age is about 25 or 26, and the median age in Florida is 75, 76. And most of those people now are retired, and they're just relaxing and being. And I started wondering, why am I not allowing myself that space? Because for me to really relax and be is to continually co-create, connect the dots, and serve. But I went through a period of self-doubt, anxiety, which has been exacerbated by all that is around itself. And even though I know many things to do to travel, it's still stressful to travel. So one of the very first things that you have to do, I think, is have compassion for the human experience. Just have self-compassion. Nothing is as it seems, and you can't have all your ducks in a row, and that's just totally okay. It's just totally okay. You can pay attention to your feelings. They could be anger or fear or stress or irritability or sadness. In fact, there's articles being written how young people are having more and more stress and irritability and depression and anger and fear and sadness. And there's more and more triggers, but noticing those feelings and not identifying with those feelings. And I'm a human being and I'm allowed these feelings, but I am not totally my feelings. And having self-compassion that this one little element of space, remember, your universe is this little outline of a human being and the rest of this whole crazy largesse universe. And you're supposed to hold all of this together. Have some self-compassion that it's just crazy, crazy, crazy hard to hold all this together and at times not feel like you're going to totally explode. But the decency of angels that Lincoln spoke about, the decency of angels is that we all get to choose if we're going to look at things with a reframe of improvement and hope, or stay velcroed to a sense of angst and lack of control. Our reactions to trauma really unfold a lot from the habits that we set up by the little moments that we face in life. So when you're in a car and you're gridlocked in traffic, when you're at the post office and it's a line of 45 minutes, you can choose to get really upset. You can choose to stay and get really upset. You can choose to leave and get really upset. You can choose to leave and not get upset and go do something more fun. First, have compassion for the experience. It's maddening to not be able by January 3rd to have picked up a present that arrived December 24th after 5 attempts. But if I only stay stuck in exasperation, then that's my world through glasses of exasperation. I can also just get in the car, leave the post office, and go for a long ride or row in my rowing machine in the living room in front of some comedies, and I have the option to change my experience rather than wallow in an experience that I don't want. And that is emotional IQ. Boy, do I wish that emotional intelligence was taught in the schools. I do have a set of books trying to download this into young children. And if anyone out there is helpful or needs these, I'll be glad to share them. But emotional intelligence is really what we're talking about. And times of incredible turbulence demand us to take a look at our EQ more than ever. Pandemic dysphoria. Feeling like overwhelm. Now is the time. Give yourself self-compassion that you do feel that, and then look at all the steps and habits you can develop to face it in a more sane way. We all feel like, oh, I want to have a PhD. I want to have a postdoc. I want to have impeccable credentials. I want to go to somebody that throw out all the names of the top schools, that's where they've been trained. That's what society respects. I respect sanity and emotional intelligence. I want somebody who's had a lot of experiences and from all of that has worked on self-congruencies, first starting with self-compassion and then developing habits and skills for self-congruency so I can really experience sanity, deep sanity and kindness and interact with that. That's what I care about. That's the postdoc that I care about. So I think we each have to find when we're triggered by that which is an isness, right? There is this isness now that's happening in the world more than ever, but it's always like this, always the potential for lots and lots of turbulence in life because nothing is guaranteed. This is a time when you can be compassionate to yourself and toward others rather than being more triggered and being more Karen-esque. Find what helps you sink into more congruency. For me, it's being physical outside, whether it's kayaking. I can go down to the Austin Rowing Center and I can kayak by myself, or I can find a canoe buddy because boy, on a canoe, you're 6 feet apart. You're just canoed, socially distanced. It's actually kind of cool how canoes are set up. I find if I'm outside doing huge cardio, nothing helps me more than that. Other people, that might not be the deal. And also rest, rest, rest. I have found I've had to lie down in the middle of the day just to chill, chill, chill. You need to schedule more mental health days off. A lot of people working at home are now being able to do that. And if you get really filled with turbulence again, you can just start all over this again. Self-compassion, because being a human being isn't easy. Being a human being in today's unprecedented times isn't easy. No matter what your life is, everybody's got their clump of clay, and it isn't totally easy for anybody. Don't compare yourself. Know your triggers. Figure out the things that help bring you back to congruency in body, mind, and spirit, and focus on emotional intelligence. It matters. And you are the one that drives that truck down the road. So, life is such a mystery. We always are looking for experts that have the answers and then want to give us a symposium that's a weekend symposium. And by Monday, we can have a set of the answers. But the truth is, and of course, this is the reality, life is such a mystery. We have the spiritual mystics like the Dalai Lama and Andrew Harvey, and Thomas Merton was one of the early theologians that really blew my mind up about the glory of the universe. But let's just call life spade a spade. It's a mystery. We keep trying to have all our ducks in a row, and now in the pandemic, we just can't possibly do it, nor can our experts or our politicians. And even the Pope is saying, please, let's break down walls and come more together. But it is difficult and it's a mystery. And there's so much we can't control. As a culture, we're always trying to get, every commercial is trying to sell us something that's going to give us a little bit more control. And it's such an illusion. It's a huge tsunami. And some of life is never the way we would have hoped, prayed, or wanted. How many people died in this last year that have close family members but couldn't have one of them with them, or only on a FaceTime? So some of life is never the way we would hope, pray, or want. But this isness is is-ness, isness. It's real, it's huge, it's powerful. So how do we come to grips and peace with isness? Right now, unprecedented struggle, emotional struggle. That's the isness for the planet. How do we come to peace? One, compassion that the human condition always is on the brink because we're very fragile and yet we're very resilient. But a huge part of peace is accepting the isness. All the while we work toward betterment, accepting what is part of the calming of the soul and allowing us to live life. Yet at the same time, we want to work with discipline toward that which we would prefer. But if you're Velcro to that which you don't have, that is a recipe for suffering. And there's already enough suffering surrounding you. So why live inside body, mind, spirit in a state of suffering? We want a state of peace with the isness that we now have on the plate in front of us. It's never easy, but it's real. But we can create connections of choice that feed us. I think the art of life is surfing the isness. The deep dive of life is using our own life as our best curriculum. And the lifelong journey is not to want what you don't have while gently working toward that which you prefer. So right now we don't have peace, but we can gently within our own life work toward that which we prefer, which is health and peace. Starting with compassion for the human condition, noting your triggers, and having a set of actions that you develop from habits into what helps you get out of that reactivity from those triggers. For me, it's being outside and pushing myself. Love that it was so windy last weekend. I got to canoe 2 hours on Saturday, 2 hours on Sunday there were even little white, the waves had white tops on them. It was so windy out. And so I was deep breathing for hours. Boy, that exertion is a great way for me to get untriggered and to have more self-compassion and to have more peace with the isness that's unfolding at the moment. Now, all this is easier said than done, right? Anything that's worthwhile is always easier said than done. But we can practice, notice, breathe. Practice, notice, breathe. Practice, notice, breathe. Practice, notice, breathe. Self-compassion, notice, and be building up a set of habits that get you to a better relationship with the isness around you and the isness in your life, whether you're by yourself or whether you are in a relationship that's not working, stuck at home. And developing tools that give you a better immune system and a better life, even though we're not hearing about this from our CDC and a lot of our experts. We know that specific nutrients and colorful veggies, and the best tool we have is a healthy immune system. So practice, notice, breathe, live as well as you can most of the time. You don't have to be perfect all of the time. That's stressful. Practice, notice, breathe, live well most of the time. All necessary tools for soul sculpting, soul buffing, living in peace, and developing an immune system that is not vulnerable. Of course, we think there's some genetics, the blood type issue, A, being more protective against COVID, being less protective against COVID, O, being more protective. These studies are coming and yo-yoing back and forth. But the big deal is, what do you do on your plate, in your exercise, in your viewpoint that build up the reserves in your tissue and emotional piggy banks so that when you are exposed, you don't get critically ill. I was talking to Dr. Brownstein the other day, and I was saying to him, well, have you been using the drug that we can't name or the other drug that we can't name for your patients? And he said, I don't even have a need for that. When I do all the natural protocols, my patients are getting well and they're not going into the hospital. And if the 2 out of the 107 that went to the hospital didn't even have to be intubated. So there's a lot that we can do, and you need to be living it. Wherever you go, there you are. Wherever in the pandemic you can't go, don't go, there you are. I love those lines from Louise Erdrich, The Painted Drum. And I've been reading this over and over. I just am a wordsmith, and I adore other wordsmiths that make the chords of my heart feel more hopeful. Life will break you. Nobody can protect you from that. And living alone won't either, for solitude will also break you with its yearning. You have to love. You have to feel. It is the reason you are here on earth. You are here to risk your heart. You are here to be swallowed up. And when it happens that you are broken or betrayed or left or hurt or death brushes near, as it does for so many of us now in COVID, let yourself sit by an apple tree and listen to the apples falling all around you in heaps. wasting their sweetness. Tell yourself you tasted as many as you could. So I had the honor to spend a little time with someone who's a very successful person recently, but who admitted that their whole life they've just been afraid to really live, afraid to go outside the box, afraid to not be working regular hours and then even hours beyond regular hours, put more and more and more money in the bank to give money to the offspring so they could buy a home, but yet at the same time, they're not totally living because they feel like they're fearful. They even said that they recommended their kids not take their example. Their kids should be more bold in their life, more courageous in their life, because they felt that their life was hampered, hindered, made smaller by fear. So we live in a time of a lot of fear, but fear can hamper you. Fear can hold you back. Fear hurts. So how do you intelligently have a relationship with fear, yet not miss out on living your life that is such a gift? How do you see the light despite all the darkness, which is one of the definitions of hope? How do you allow yourself in a time of the planet quieting down to still feel that your life isn't being wasted, but is being lived? I think we have to take a look at how we're living in the moment, and it might be a brand new way that it's unfolding. Even though things around us are scary, how do we within our own heart and home not live from fear? When I used to live with Swami Satchidananda in the center, the Yoga Integral Center in Pomfret Center, Connecticut, many years ago, he would always say, make no appointments and you will have no disappointments. So you can't have expectations. You can't want what isn't, but you can strive to live a life of less fear. So I want to end this show with saying, boy, what a time this has been. And I hope this has been helpful to give you a few tools, but this has been so brought up in my face because I've had so many friends die in the last year, just in the last few months. My dance teacher, who was only in his mid-40s, was diagnosed with a rare cancer and a few weeks later died. Dr. Alan S. Crandall, who was a colleague and physician of mine at the Moran Eye Institute, at the John A. Moran Eye Center in the University of Utah. He called in on a Friday and said, I'm going to take some time off. And Thursday, he died. So wherever we don't go, here we are. And none of these people died from COVID, not COVID related. So we always live as though we have all the time in the world, and COVID is showing us we don't have all the time in the world. Life is always showing us we don't have all the time in the world, but we always want to act as though we do have all the time in the world. So we don't want to be filled with fear, but this moment needs to be dived into because this is what you have. This is your life. Here you are. So how can we make 2021 filled with hope? Dr. Crandall was a brilliant, caring surgeon. One of the amazing things from him was that he always had an open mind, and a mind is like a parachute. It works much better when it's open. And he was open to so many things like my use of ozone and the identification of molecules of mass destruction that are damaging to the optic nerve. He listened to everything that was different. He was open to everything that was different. He was an ophthalmologic surgeon, but he was not a closed-minded human being. So I think part of my gift from having had time with Dr. Alan Crandall was learning how amazing it is to be more open than you could have ever thought you would be, to noting life, to listening to what life has to teach you, to seeing the pandemic at the moment but not taking it into every single cell of your body, to going, isn't this amazing? This is an unprecedented time. And how am I, in my own little world, going to utilize this so I can emerge in making this, allowing me, stirring the soil of my foundations to still have a good life, to have a great relationship with isness, and come out within 2021 with more hope, adding calm to the shrill, not chaos to the unknown. Maybe this isn't a set of answers, because life really can't have a set of answers. But I think it's so important. We have humanity, and humanity isn't easy. But each step we live, we can give more dignity to that humanity, which does build a momentum of hope, or we cannot. I know one woman wrote me that she likes to listen to these shows while she's languishing in a morning bath. So I'm hoping that these words are like that warm water, a boon to the soul, and a calm to the spirit, and some fuel for the hope that I hope is growing, that 2021 might be a better year for the world. And even if it doesn't unfold in that way, it might be a deeper, better year for you. Happy New Year. Be well. Much love. Bye-bye.